Hello, and thanks for tuning into this special edition of the show. But don't worry, I haven't entered the lucrative world of custom toolbox making. The VR6 Beetle build will be going ahead. Anyway, why build a custom toolbox? It's a nuisance, takes a long time, but I have a 1959 classic VW transporter and I wanted a toolbox that was big enough to carry all the tools that I need, but small enough to not be a massive workshop toolbox. I looked around to find things that were in the same vein, the same aesthetic, and there really wasn't anything around that suited my needs. So Mrs. Santa bought me a bamboo P1S printer last Christmas, and I thought I'd put that thing to work. Anyway, have a look at what I've done.
Okay, so a bit of a dramatic entrance, but anyway, let me show you some of the details. So I've included these black plastic trims to emulate rubber mouldings, which I've seen on some of the older European toolboxes. And in keeping with the 1950s, 1960s look, I've got some recesses and some ribs here to emulate the pressed metal look. Moving to the top, there's an indent required for the knobs and the ribbing on the very top shelf, again in that sort of 50s, 60s sort of theme. And again, the knobs on the top of the post are designed in the classic shape. I've just included the Passion Garage logo into the very top. And as a practical inclusion, I've got this carry handle, which also doubles as a cup holder with the toolboxes expanded. So here's the toolbox unit in the carry position. Can of Coke here for scale. Sorry, I didn't have any metric bananas. So the unit measures about 480 millimeters from ground to the top of the handle, about 480 lengthwise and 240 millimeters widthwise, not including the wheels. And here is the unit in the working position, complete with the lamp. So the total unit height is 780 millimeters, excluding the lamp. So this serves my purpose now. There's all my sockets, a hammer and a bits and pieces, towel roll, some spanners, screwdrivers, more sockets, and here's some electrical bits and pieces if I get stuck on the side of the road. Now these are bins which I have included in the kit. This is a special little one that I've made to suit the particular relay I have in the car. This has got a ceramic and a standard type fuse holder with a little tidy compartment underneath. So these are ceramic type fuse that just stay on top. These are some special rolls I've made to just put a little bit of wire just in case you have a little electrical breakdown on the side of the road, and a holder here for your electrical tape. And then this surface is obviously a work surface while you're mucking about or stuck on the side of the road.
Here are all the parts that you require to build this actual toolbox. I'll point them out one by one. Okay, here we have the bottom tub. This is the very top shelf. And then this is the shelf that goes intermediate. In my case, and in the case of all these parts and the dimensions, I have 2 intermediate shelves. This is the back axle, as I call it, and that back axle fits on that side of the tub. Here are the casters, which I locate to what I call the front, and the rods, post rods. Here are the wheels that are located to what I call the rear, and the posts and rods that go to the rear.
And here are the components for the carry handle / cup holder.
This lamp is optional, holder that goes along with it. So if you don't want the lamp, don't bother printing the holder part. I'll give details of the lamp and dimensions in the information supplied with the 3D file when you go to the actual link. That way you can get a bit more information than what you see here.
So we're going to start with the top posts. I'm going to use computer graphics here just to make the illustrations easier. So take one of the 8mm threaded rods you've already cut to size and place on there a 8mm nut and just wind it down for a short distance. Then place the 3D printed knob on top of the rod and slide the knob down until it touches the other nut. Then install another M8 nut on the very top of the rod. Then add a dot of weld to the top of the rod to weld the nut in place so that the two are locked together. Then lift the knob back up, making sure to locate it in the correct position as the hex of the nut that you've just welded on. Now looking to the underside of the knob, just wind the nut up till it touches the underside of the knob and tighten it up with a spanner accordingly. Now if you turn the knob, the threaded rod should rotate in unison. Take the post tube and slide it over the threaded rod and then push the tube all the way to the underside of the knob. Take the 3D printed stopper and insert it into the tube. This stopper needs to be a tight fit on the walls of the tube, so you might need a hammer to just gently tap it into place. Take an M8 nut and just wind it up close to the underside of the stopper. So it must be noted that there is a specific distance from the bottom of the nut to the bottom of the tube. So take the bottom pole insert and line it up against the tube as shown. So push the threaded rod up so it lines up with the bottom of the top of the curb of the insert. So the nut should be wound up to the underneath of the stopper, and the stopper should be located so that the threaded rod cannot be pulled up any further than shown. Now install the pole bottom insert. This must be a tight fit also, so gently tap it into place, ensuring not to damage the curved bottom area. And as a final test, push the knob down and up to ensure that the nut is actually restricting the length of thread being exposed. Just repeat the same process for the other post. Now take the M8 threaded rod for the base post that you've already cut to length and screw on an M8 hex coupler. Now it is important that you do not screw the threaded rod into the coupler more than 10 millimeters. Once you have done that, apply a small weld between the coupler and the threaded rod to secure them together. You will need to grind the weld smooth to ensure that it fits into the 3D printed insert. Take the 3D printed insert and an M8 nut and install the nut inside the insert, ensuring that the nut is flush with the face of the insert. Now install the previous threaded rod into the insert, making sure that the hex coupler indexes correctly with the hex shape inside the insert. Take an M8 nut and thread it all the way up the rod to the underside of the insert. Now tighten with a spanner. Now take a base steel tube and install the insert assembly. The insert is pushed in from the side where you previously had drilled a hole into the base tube. Care must be taken to ensure that the hole in the base tube lines up with the nut in the insert. You can use a piece of threaded rod or an M8 bolt to confirm alignment. The insert must also be a tight fit, so you may need to use a hammer to gently push it into the correct location. Take an M8 nut and wind it onto the threaded rod so that it is 10 millimeters above the base of the tube. Now take the printed pole bottom insert and push it into the bottom of the pole. You should feel that it's inserted into place, and it also will be restricted by the nut you installed previously. Now repeat the same process for the other post.
We'll start with what I call the rear. Now, as mentioned previously, when you assemble the post, there is a post that has a longer thread, so that is the one that will go to what I call the rear. So simply just take that post, insert it into the hole. You might have to twist it and just let it go in. Now this should be a reasonably tight fit. It shouldn't particularly wobble, maybe just a tiny bit, but it should be a pretty firm fit. So once you've done that, take the axle bracket. You'll see it's got this central hole. That central hole will go through the post hole, and the other holes should line up with the bottom of the tub. Once you've done that, you will need to take a large washer. I had to trim this, so this is a 50mm mudguard washer. It was just trimmed one edge to allow it to fit. So that goes on there. Nut on. Tighten it up. Don't tighten it all the way, just leave it a little bit loose for now. Next is the nuts that go through the tub itself into the bracket. Bolt, 2 washers, nothing magic here. Through the tub, into the bracket, and just put the nut on enough so the threads are to the bottom. Don't tighten it all the way just yet. Do the same for the rest. Okay, so now those bolts are in, just push them all in. Again, don't tighten them up yet. We're going to insert the axle, which is this 8mm threaded rod. So it's a bit awkward, so what you need to do, so insert the rod, put a washer down the bottom there, and also a nut. Then wind the nut onto the thread, you can see here. The reason you do it this way is because those other nuts holding the tub interfere. So you just need to persevere. Just keep winding the rod through because you want to be able to put the nut on this side. So just keep winding. Okay, so now we're back here. Just take the other nut. Put the nut on first. Wind that down. Put the washer on. And then reverse the process of the other nut. Now it is reasonably important that you get these threads the same distance. So, now it's very important that when you adjust these two internal nuts here, that you don't really wind them up, you just want them to be finger tight. Okay, so I've got 50mm each side, so I'm happy with that. So now we can just simply put on the back wheels. You could put another nut here if you wish, that's up to you. So basically just nothing interesting here. Put the wheel on, put the nut on. Now I've specified these Acorn nuts, not for any particular reason other than I think they look nice. So you could use normal bolts if you don't want to spend the extra, or you just can't get them. So put the ends on. This is where you need the two spanners on both sides. Just hold each side, just firm. So now we just need to tighten these bolts. You've got a choice. You could either pre-cut the bolts to a perfect length to finish flush with the head of the nut, or you could just do what I've done here and just go with the standard bolt. Okay, for this astute out there, you will notice that it says carhouse.com. That's actually our website that is still currently under development. So that's the back axle done. That should sit nicely like that. Now, again, we haven't tightened this bolt yet, and I'll get to that later. These rectangular plates are where the casters go, and these short ribs. So these casters, they're nothing magic. They do have a nice bearing on there and a roller bearing also for the wheels, and a brake mechanism, which I've come to find really handy. I've got it mounting this way, as you can see by the hole directions. You'll notice that I put the nuts on this side, not the same side, and the reason for that is so that the caster mechanism can spin freely and not interfere with the bolt head. Again, if you wish, you can pre-cut these to the correct length if you want to. Last piece of the puzzle is the front post. As mentioned, the thread is shorter than the other post. Just slide it in, don't worry about the holes just yet. Slide it in all the way to the bottom. Put the big mudguard washer on and just tighten it up, but not completely. So just get the bolt in place. So this tube, like the rear one, they should both rotate fairly freely at the moment. Okay, so this is what's called the intermediate shelf. Now, as mentioned, this has already been joined off camera. So there is a seam along here, I did a little bit of post-processing to get these nice and smooth. The other thing to note that this bumper is a separate file. Left and right are both the same, so just print as many as you need for the bumpers. And the bumpers just slide on. There is a groove inside. These just slide on, and then you just put a little bit of your acetone glue and push them together. But I would recommend assembling the main component, the blue part here first, and then come back the next day and put the bumper on. The bumper might need a little bit of final finishing to get it to fit nice. As an option, you could print the bumper in TPU. I haven't done that, but that would give that a nice authentic feel, making that into a top of rubber. Now the top shelf is exactly the same process as the intermediate shelves. So again, an acetone glue joint, leave for a day, put the bumpers on, leave for a day. All right, so before we get any further, the next thing is you take our completed tub, and what we want to do is just make sure that the intermediate shelf slides up and down on the posts. So there isn't a left and right, it goes either way, it's symmetrical. So there's these big holes here, there, and they fit over the post. Now what I've had to do, which isn't part of the print, so you'll need to do this yourself, is just oval out this hole with a sanding belt. I've included the one that I've used in the print files as well, so I don't know if you can actually see, but a bit hard on camera, but the holes are actually ovaled out, so they're pretty much the original print left and right, but this way I've added a bit of length, and the reasoning for that is so that when you go to pull this up from the handles, what we install in a minute, it gives you a little bit more room so that you can actually physically lift it up nice and straight. It doesn't catch. All right. And one last thing to mention, if you want, I've installed some 9mm wide foam, self-adhesive foam, into the edge, or into this groove here, and that will just act as a nice dust seal between the shelves. It'll be a slight dust seal to the bottom, but a positive seal to the next layers up. Now the top shelf is exactly the same process as the intermediate shelves. So next thing you do, just put the shelves in place. Slide it on top, one after the other. Great. So now this is actually the closed position. These poles, you just need to rotate them until you see the threaded nut sort of sticking away a bit.
Take a top post, push the knob all the way in and align the thread with that on the bottom post and also the curve of the top post. Wind the thread in using the knob until the knob is just firm. We need to now mark a line along the very top edge of the post. So mark the two ends and then take a ruler to draw a line between those 2 points. Now from the end here, measure the distance as shown on the screen and mark that to be your drill point. Now take your pilot drill, add some sort of guide so that you don't drill into the threaded rod inside the post. Drill your pilot hole and repeat this process to drill the final 10mm hole. So assembling the carry handle is pretty straightforward. You'll notice this piece is marked top. There's a large circle on one side of this piece and it is marked to off with an arrow. 8mm bolt, M8 nut with nylock and a washer. So just thread the washer onto the bolt, then take this piece, push the nut into the hole, and then rotate it so that the word top you can see. Then take the handle, insert the bolt into the bottom of the handle, and you'll note that the word top, turn it around, got the word top, and zu af are aligned the same way. Drop the M8 nut into there, that'll recess into there nicely, and then just tighten it up by hand to start with. Take your spanner, and you just want to tighten that up enough so there's some resistance when you go to turn the handle. The reason for the top and the arrows being in the way they are is so that when you put a cup in, the holder, which is the large side, it's being held by this edge here. And this is how it will be fixed onto the trolley post itself. So to do the final alignment of the posts, take the handle as you assembled previously, just drop that in the middle there, doesn't have to be specific. Take one of the handles. Now you'll notice that there's a hole. This is actually for the handle / cup holder. Insert the thread into the pole nut and then wind the end, and then just nip it up, and then what you do is you rotate this, so push on the arm until it is just over this indent here. So just there roughly. Then repeat the process with the other post. Here's the little trick. So what you need to do is take the handle and just make sure it's underneath the pole that you just installed. Rotate the post until it's over the indent roughly. Now to get the final alignment, what you do is that you've got this handle here and you move it up and down until you feel it latch in to the hole in the post. As you can see here, there is a dowel and it will just locate into the post hole. The pole's up as before, and then you just pull this and move the post slightly until both sides lock in. That's now sitting up on the post. The next thing is you just rotate, following the arrows. It's closed. Any type 3 fans will probably recognise that. What you've got here is you've got the posts and the handle all rigid together, and that's how you need to carry this thing. You cannot carry this thing with the handles alone because this plastic doesn't not have enough strength. So now, once you've done that, is you just go to the underside and you just gently tighten these bolts until it's firm. You may need to hold the top so it doesn't rotate. Now install the top post vertically into the base post, noting two things. You need to index the hex head of the coupler, and also the hole that you previously drilled should be facing towards the other post as shown. Next, test fit the cup handle. Now take the cup holder handle, noting the dowel, inserting the dowel into the post hole and the cup holder over the hole post itself, and rotate the handle to close it. Now take the top shelf and lift it up until you can't lift it up any higher. Hold the shelf and install the cup holder as previously shown. Now take some soft jaw clamps and lock the top shelf into the very top position. Now take a marker pen, insert it into the hole and mark a tiny dot onto the post itself. Use a center punch now to mark the center of that dot. Then drill the pilot hole and the final 8mm hole using the same method as previous. Repeat this to drill the hole on the other side in the other pole. Next, lift up the intermediate shelf below up to the desired height. Measure both sides to make sure they are equal. Now, mark and drill the holes into the posts as the previous process. And repeat this process again for the second intermediate shelf.
Need to install these locking clips. So what these are, they have a spring inside, you pull and then release with the spring. There's no lock on this particular kind because I found this to be the best method rather than the other option, which is to pull and lock. Just a straight pull and return, nice and straight. Do as many turns as you can by hand, and then once you feel it's going in straight, 14mm spanner in this case, just gently start winding it in. It'll just be cutting its own thread as it goes. So that's firm there, just lightly nipped up. Okay, next thing to do, just take the nut. It's a bit fiddly, I don't know if you can see in there, but there is a ridge for the nut. Just put the nut over, get a screwdriver and just gently push it around until you feel it tightening up. You'll feel it's tight. Jam the screwdriver in and then just firmly tighten the nut up. So this should be now nice and solid. And of course repeat for the other side. Repeat for the other shelf because this has got two intermediate shelves. Now the top shelf is exactly the same process as the intermediate shelves. Install the return clips. So now this is actually the post position. So now the box is pretty much ready for action.